Don't be intimidated by anybody. Do your own thing.
Today on Wet, we are joined by an extraordinary guest whose mastery of watercolor, Kathleen Giles, is a highly acclaimed American watercolorist and an educator whose work is celebrated for its vivid realism, rich storytelling, and dramatic use of color and light. And her paintings have earned top honors in major national and international exhibitions. How do you judge a painting? So, what are you looking for?
That's what I tell my students. What is this about? Is this about a face, a portrait, an expression? Then don't put the fence in and the car and the tractor in the background. So we always want to think about, what is this about?
How do you plan your painting?
I work light to dark, but I get a
Okay.
few darks in. So say I'm doing a portrait or something. I'll start with some skin, get a little color maybe in the background, but I'll put a nice dark, like right here, just like my blackest black, wherever it is, just to help me judge those middle values.
How does your ideal student should practice more painting or practice more art?
You can't be afraid to ruin a painting, for one thing, because chances are you are going to ruin it, maybe, if you if you haven't been painting a lot. So I think just paint a lot.
Sure.
It's very helpful to have someone that can give you an honest critique.
How do you know if the painting is going the way you're going? Do you have a milestone?
I don't start painting until I got a really good idea of what I want it to look like. See things in your imagination. So that's something that people really need to develop.
For somebody who doesn't know, Kathleen, about who you are, where you grew up, could you just kind of give an intro about who you are, what you do, or at least what do you introduce yourself these days?
I started drawing as a child. I always wanted to be an artist ever since I can remember, and I drew all the time. I drew. We used to have a television program that would come, a TV guide, and they'd have these little things in there, and you'd draw these characters and send it in, and I always thought they looked perfect. And I said to my mother, why aren't I winning? And they said, well, they want people that are old enough to go to school, So, but I always drew, and always, like I say, wanted to be an artist. But I am an art school dropout. I went to art school, when I graduated, and I after a year, I was done. I didn't like it. I was paying for it. It was, this is the late 70s that I, was there, and everything was very abstract. And I didn't have a clear vision of what I wanted to do. Now, looking back, I wished I had just stayed and gotten my teaching degree, but it just worked out for my life, because at the time I was dating my husband, and we got married. I got married very young. I was 19, and had my children. I have 3 sons, but when number 3 was 2, I took a watercolor class. So previously I had worked in oil pastel, oil, charcoal. I did quite a bit of charcoal, but I don't know. I kind of grew up with my children, and when the third one went to school, I just found myself to be lonely. We live in the country, and I was lonely, and I thought, well, what if I taught an art class at the senior center? So that's how I started teaching, and my first watercolors were painfully terrible. I always say like a lollipop tree. So I didn't have a good teacher at the time. She actually was terrible. But when I started teaching, I'm sure I probably wasn't much better, but I learned through all these years of teaching, it's funny, when you learn how to explain what you're doing, you actually learn yourself. It reinforces to yourself. It's like, well, why am I doing it this way? And I don't know. So I think over the years, I've grown into a very good instructor, I think, but it wasn't easy. And so I just, I have a certain story about my life. I when I was in my 30s and 40s, we live in a canal town. So we're on the Erie Canal where I grew up, and I would paint the canal, and I had my work in restaurants, and I did reproductions, and was very successful. Like you've heard of the big fish in a little pond, but
Yes.
when I about 15 years ago, I just decided that I had seen the world of these national instructors coming in and teaching and traveling. And I just at that age was like, I want to do that. So I was very intimidated when
Mhm.
I would read the art magazines because I didn't have a degree. And I always thought, oh, I'll never get in a magazine. So I started about 15 years ago entering the national um, competitions to try to make my bio. So my bio was just going to be winning. And of course, I had so many rejections, and I still get rejected. But over the years, I started to build, a decent reputation, and then, finally started getting the invitations to teach around the country. And now I'm judging the National Watercolor Society show. So it's amazing. It's amazing that I'm just kind of a housewife in the country, and I'm a grandmother first, but I'm more successful than I ever dreamed that I would be. So I'm very thankful.
I
that,
mean,
that that's it in a nutshell.
no, no, no. That there is so much to unpack there, Kathleen. I mean, just so first of all, I just wanted to try to understand a little more about. I'm always curious about. There is one parent or a teacher who appreciates or at least recognizes the art and then pushes the kid to art or painting and other things. Was there anybody in your life? Was it both your parents, or somebody else? Somebody starts that. Okay, it says that. Okay, you're good enough. Why don't you do more? You
My
recognize
father.
your father.
my
Okay.
my father, he thought I could be president of the United States. He was just, he just always believed in me,
Yeah.
always encouraged me, and he just was always so excited when I would accomplish something. He was very proud of me. And through the years, he died when I was he died quite young.
Mhm.
And I always think, oh, I hope you can see me, Dad. I hope you can see, because
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably strutting around in heaven. That's my daughter. But he was so proud of me. And then my husband, I got married so young. Um, my husband, he's kind of, where he resists change, and I kind of have to push for everything, something new. So that's a whole story. But he's a wonderful support to
Mhm.
me, and he's been fantastic, and my family,
Yeah.
and everybody, of course, has been painted so many times, and they're all very proud of me. It's wonderful.
No, but I feel it's like all the stories I've been talking to a lot of artists here in UK again through the podcast and again in Europe every time I travel, because that's a story which I feel is like the foundation to everything, is like there's somebody who believes and then makes you believe you can do it, right? As a kid, you don't know what a failure is. You Somebody just encourages you, you start and then you do. And then also it struck me when you said that you got married at 19, right? The kids these days don't have the maturity at 19, right? Navigating that and then trying to get into art school and then getting into watercolor. uh, how was the? I'm just trying to understand. Is like were you working odd jobs, or was it just your husband working, or how was raising three kids? I'm just trying to understand because your painting, it makes so much sense now when I look at your paintings now, listening to that piece of work. There's so much story in your paintings. I'm just trying to understand raising three kids when you're young. How does it shape you, or has it any impact on the painting itself?
Yes, but I'm a very spiritual person, so a lot of a lot of what I've chosen, each, my the steps in my life, had something to do with my faith in God and
Yeah.
just different, really amazing things that happened
Mhm.
that would just reinforce, yes, you're on the right path, and I have a rainbow story. I have all these different things, but there was, like I say, there's was some resistance with my husband when we were young. I worked, gosh, well, I worked as an optician's assistant.
Sure.
So I would grind lenses and all that stuff and make glasses, and that was a pretty good job. But when the boys, I left. I quit my job to have my son, my
Mhm.
first son. I mean, I stayed there part time a little bit, and then it just wasn't working out. But then I got a job at a bank. So yes, I did like odd jobs. Um, Luckily, my husband and he did not get his college degree either, and he wasn't a good student in high school. But we've both been really blessed with health. Knock on wood. Um, we've been blessed with health. Health. We're both very hard workers, and we just come from, it's a rags to riches. We were quite poor when the
Sure.
boys were little. We bought this old house in the country, and he's like, oh yeah, we'll have it fixed up in a year. And we still make changes to it. So we've been in the same home for, I don't know, a long, long time.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful legacy for our kids, to come
Mhm.
home here to the country. But
Yeah.
um, but anyway, I just um, my husband always worked two jobs,
Mhm.
and two, or at least two jobs. There was a time when he has a machine shop. I actually ran a machine when the boys were little for extra money, and I ran I don't know, a grinder or something. I don't even know what it
Sure.
was. But yeah, it hasn't been an easy road. And as far as the artwork, I just always am trying to be a better artist,
Mhm.
and just I've never taken a workshop myself, and I tell my
Sure.
students that, and they're like, can't believe it. But um, I've learned so much from reading
Mhm.
magazines, but I always tell my students, you can't just read them, you have to try the things. And years ago in Artist Magazine, I read this thing about a triad and how the three colors, work together. And that's the basis for what I teach when I go around the country now. And I just tell people, and while we all know that stuff, we don't, some people don't use it, the way that we can use color to gray things. And so that's what I do. A lot of my paintings are basically three colors, and then I
Yeah.
have some, fun colors that I add in there. But um, yeah, I think I'm starting to ramble. What? what,
No, no,
what
you're not rambling, but this is the good part is where you get to understand what the person is and then how the artist is, right? Because I'm so interested right now is like, it's just because it struck me is you got married young, working hard. That kind of grit is kind of important. It kind of humbles you. I feel it's like, uh, I got two young kids as well, young boys, but how was your experience in the college? You said that you started the art school and then you didn't like the class. Was it the structure? Was it the subject? What was not going along your way?
well, I was very naive. I think I uh, I just wanted to be an artist. I was just kind of
Sure.
a ditzy girl, and I just hadn't really thought things through. But um, I was just following the path I thought, go to art school. But um, we didn't have any money, when I graduated. And it was funny, I never even considered taking on debt like kids do
Yeah.
today. I just was like, well, we can't afford this. So I went to the state, it was SUNY at Buffalo,
Yeah.
and um, you had to submit a portfolio and all that. But like I said, it was very abstract. Like I had one class where we were cutting out plastic shapes and gluing them together with crazy glue. And I was like, I'm paying for this? So I didn't get it. I didn't get it.
Yeah.
Um, I had an art history class, so we'd have to
Yeah.
go to the art museum, and we're looking at these Egyptian dolls, or Egyptian stone things. I honestly could not tell the difference between one and the other, and I just thought, how is this going to help my life?
Yeah.
So the only I had a life drawing class. That was the only decent class I had,
Mhm.
in my opinion,
Yeah.
that first semester. So, in the first day, we go in, and the man's naked. Well, I wasn't, innocent, but I was shocked. And, so we're drawing him, and he gets up and walks around, and he came and stood right next to me naked. So I go home and I start crying. I told my father, this guy was naked and he was standing next to me. So he called his art friend that had helped me put my portfolio together, and he's like, well, that's life drawing, that's normal, but they aren't supposed to walk around naked. They're supposed to put a robe on. So the next day I went back, and he never came again, so I must not have been the only one that was upset with his behavior. But the funny part is, it's the only A I got in college was the life drawing, so I got over it. And and then years later, after I had a couple of the boys, I took a class for nude drawing, and it was a young kid, and he kind of sat in front of me and straddled a chair, and I thought, I've seen that before, and I just drew him. But it does
No,
help you learn.
yeah, but this one sounds like a good skit for a soap opera or something like that. It's
It, it
definitely.
was it was it was pretty weird, but yeah. But I don't paint nudes either.
Yeah,
I feel like there's a lot of nudity in the world, and
yeah,
I think if I painted nudes, it would be sexy, and it's just like, yeah, I don't need to do that.
yeah. I'm just. How did you get into what made you pick watercolor of all the things? Okay, you said that after a while you picked a course in
I took a
watercolor. What?
course.
Yeah, what made you pick watercolor? Was it because you already tried oil and pastel and you just wanted to check, or what was the thought behind that?
I don't remember. I remember that my youngest son was 2, and I don't know. I just took this class. It was at the Keenan Center, where I have
Mhm.
since taught quite a bit. But excuse me. Um, I just remember that it's funny because my first paintings were terrible, but I stayed with it. So I don't really know why, but it was just maybe God's hand on my life. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I wasn't one of those ones that just sat down and painted a beautiful painting. It took
Mhm.
years of work. And I started winning on a local level, and that encourages you. I always tell my students, you know, um, you should always show your work, and start out, small. But see, when we paint a painting and we think it's amazing, we're home here at our kitchen table and we think, oh my gosh, if anybody sees this, they're just going to think I'm awesome. And then you go put it in a show, and it's like, oh, I thought it was better than this. But that's how you learn. And I would see another work, and I would say, why does your painting glow? And she'd say, well, I use a lot of yellow. So
Yeah.
then, I tuck that away. But I learned so much just from observation. I'm thank God I'm an intelligent woman. I've figured a lot of stuff out, but I've
Mhm.
mostly learned through error. And I
Yeah.
think that's why I'm a good teacher, because I always tell them, listen, I know the hard way. Don't do this, do this. So, um, I don't know.
So
I
was
don't
that
know. I
after
don't
the class? Did you just stick with watercolor, and then do you know the moment when you did a painting, you know that you are good at it, and then you want to continue doing it? Do you remember what painting that was?
know.
No.
But I do know about myself that if there was a point where I wasn't good enough to continue, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I've always believed, and I think that goes back to my father, I've always believed that if I work hard enough, I can do anything. I do believe that, and I feel like anybody, if you really want to learn to paint, you've got
Yeah.
to really, you've got to make an effort. You can't. Unfortunately, I see a lot of people that just take a lot of classes, but they don't. have time behind the brush, and you've
Yeah.
got to paint. You've got to paint and paint and paint. But I've had so many rejections, and then when something good would happen, it was just so exciting. I think because I say I started out showing my work at a small, a small art guild level, and then you'll have some success at that level, and then you go to the next level and you get totally rejected, but then you keep working harder, and I think it's just going up a ladder
Yeah.
of process. I i don't feel like I've painted my best work yet, and
Okay.
I feel like I'm still good. I'm getting older, and it's like I'm not. I don't think I'm going down yet. I think I'm still maybe going up
Mhm.
a little bit. So with what I um, technique and just my ideas. My work has changed a lot over the years. Like I've gone from just trying to paint something that I've seen someone else paint. I think a lot of times we're affected. We'll see someone's painting and think, "Oh, I love that. I want to paint that." But we have to paint our own life. We have
Sure.
to paint our own stuff. And now I've been doing this Life Is series for the past few years, and I get so excited. I'm in the process of choosing a painting to paint, and the Life Is, sometimes I'll like see a scene that inspires me, but more often than not, it's an idea. Like
Mhm.
I want to. I just had one and I can't think. Oh, well, I don't want to give away but it's swans, and it's
Yeah.
swans, and the man's kind of all ruffled up, and it's going to be like life is protecting the family.
Sure.
But that goes back to what I believe. So
Mhm.
it's nice to feel like you're telling a story and being somewhat original and true to yourself, and it's so exciting. It's so exciting to be an artist.
I mean, first of all, just while we're talking about the process, I mean, I try to think about it like, there's an image in your head, and then what comes out on the painting is far from your image, and then you're hoping that the bridge between your image in your head and the painting reduces, right? I'm just trying to understand is like, how do you've been talking about learning on your own. Could you just elaborate on what it means learning on your own? What are you changing? And then how are you, what's your measurements? How are you measuring that I've improved or at least I need to improve? Could you just expand a little bit about this?
Well, I've been blessed with a good eye. Like I can
Mhm.
tell, and I've tried to I've written some magazine articles, and I've tried to explain this. The more you study work, I always tell my students, with the internet now, get on there every day and look at paintings. And the more you look and train your eye to
Mhm.
see value and shape, in the designs, you'll see things that are wrong. So, I still screw up paintings. Last year I had 3 paintings that just didn't work. They just didn't work. So, um, I guess it's good if you can see
Mhm.
um, that something isn't right. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think the more you train your eye, the more you
Yeah.
can see it. I had a really nice man that I met. Trying to think where I was teaching in Boise.
Yeah.
And he sent me a picture yesterday, and he said, would you critique this? And I said, okay. I said, I'm going to give you a real critique. I said, so fasten your seatbelt. And, I kind of changed it in Photoshop, but um, I don't think he could see the value
Mhm.
problems. So he's got good stuff going on, but it just wasn't done yet.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I say if you show your work with other artists,
Mhm.
you'll see their work, and you'll maybe see, oh, this looks great, and this has such contrast and such punch and presence. And then if yours looks washed out, you're going to be able to see it better because it's sitting with these other paintings. I don't know, but
Yeah.
as far as getting better, uh, I've I think I've learned the most from watching demos. I was in a
Sure.
group based in the Buffalo area, and I'm from Western New York, near Buffalo, and we just lost in the football, but um, and we're getting pounded with snow today. But we would have artists come in twice a year
Mm-hmm.
to teach, to do a demo and do a workshop and then judge our show. So that's what I'm fortunate enough to do now myself. I travel and do that and judge a show. But I learned so much from watching the demo. So I
Mm-hmm.
never took a workshop because when I needed one, we couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
But there was usually like a Thursday night where they'd do a demo, and I'd always see the demos. And now, that was before we had the internet. So now you can go on and, YouTube and everywhere and just and watch demos. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the best ways to learn. And then you have to do it. You can't
Yes.
just watch it. You have to do it. But
So what are you looking at, Kathleen? So are you looking at drawing, composition, value, colors? What are you looking at? So is there a list of things you are very particular about, or is that's the order you look? Or another way to ask is like, how do you judge a painting? So what are you looking for in a good
when I
painting?
judge a show,
A show or a good painting. So what are you
a
looking
good
for?
oh, um, well, I like myself for my work. I like a narrative style.
Sure.
Painting is the best for me. But um, I think every painting we do, like right now, we just got back from Mexico. We went on vacation, and I got some great reference photos. So I'm looking through them, and I'm trying to decide, do I want to do this one, or I've got some that I'm very excited about. But um, I think one of the things right at the beginning, so I'm pulling up, I got all these boat pictures. So, if I zoom in on a boat, it's going to be about the boat. And if
Hmm.
I zoom back out, it's about the scene. So that's what I tell my students. What is this about? Is this about a face, a portrait, an expression? Then don't put the fence in and the car and the tractor in the background. So we always want to think about what is this about? And I was just asking myself this morning, I'm looking at these paintings, and when I, when I would zoom back out, I got these really great fishing boats that are, you know, just with the line in the water, and there's some pelicans flying around. If I zoom out, it's about like the vastness of the sky and the light that day and the light on the water. And the boats are just part of this scene, this
Hmm.
like idyllic feeling that we get. But if I zoom in on the boat, then I'm doing more of the pelican I caught sitting there, maybe the texture of the boat, the reflection of the water, the reflection of the boat in the water and the light. Normally, I'm drawn to things like that. I like a lot of value. I like detail, you know, but even with detail, you can't put detail everywhere or it doesn't work. So you have to have, like I don't know if you can tell back here,
Yeah.
but on my that's my granddaughter, the
Oh,
the the tightest stuff is around her face, her
mhm.
head, and the one flower, and then the other, as we go out, it gets a little softer and less detail. But
Yeah.
that's how we can really, help people focus in. But I
Yeah.
think I think a lot of times when I judge a show, I'll look at a painting and I'll think, what's the focal point? What's this
Mhm.
about? What are we doing here? So I think the most successful paintings not only have a good composition, but they have strong values. So many artists won't, you got to have light, medium, and dark. And you put a strong dark in, and then it's going to wash out all your middle values, and then they think it's too dark and they blot it off.
Yeah.
Put the dark in, and then build up the middle values to stand up to it, and you'll have, and keep your highlights. Then you've got some meat to work with.
Yeah.
But I think
So
that's
that's a
very
very
important.
interesting point you mentioned is like when you do you usually put in the darks first and then work on the other side, or how do you plan your
I,
painting?
s- I work light to dark, but I get a
Okay.
few darks in. So say I'm doing a portrait or something. I'll start with
Yeah.
some skin, get a little
Mhm.
color maybe in the background, but I'll put a nice dark, like right here,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like my blackest black, wherever it is,
Yeah.
just to help me judge those middle values, because a lot of
Mhm.
times the middle tones aren't there, and
Yeah.
that's what makes it flat. If
Yeah.
everything's middle and we don't have any darks and whites, it's just flat.
Yeah.
So it's really pretty simple.
Mhm.
um, and I really think, well, I'm not a plein air painter, for one thing. I
Sure.
mean, I can do it, but I'm never happy with it. Um, but I open all my photos. I have Photoshop elements, and I just mess with things, and that's what I've been doing, yesterday and today. Just
Sure.
um, cropping, zooming in. What am I doing? Turning up the value, turning up the color, and just I do a lot of planning that way. So
Mhm.
I've got a better chance of having a good painting.
Yeah. Now, thank you for that. That's a lot of good information. I feel it's like could you just talk us about? You said it's like everybody needs to practice more, including me, of course. So, what does a good practice looks like? Is that do you break down into focus more on drawing or on painting? How does your ideal student should practice more painting or practice more art?
Um, Let me think a minute. So, practice more art. Well, you can't be afraid to ruin a painting, for one
Sure.
thing, because chances
Mhm.
are you are going to ruin it, maybe, if you if you haven't been painting a lot. So I think just paint a lot. you know
Sure.
it's very helpful to have someone that can give you an honest critique.
Mhm.
I've done a little bit of mentoring, and some people just they need help with what I've been talking about, getting the values in there, but figuring out what story are they trying to tell. Are they just trying to copy something they saw someone else do, or
Mhm.
something? But I'm just always amazed at um, just simple things. I don't know. I'm just thinking of some particular things, and I don't want to talk about anybody. I think paint a lot. Just paint a lot.
Yep.
And uh, if you're going to paint from photographs, take good photographs.
Mhm.
Don't. One of the things I've seen people do is they're trying to do AI pictures,
Yep.
and they're don't do that. They're so
Mhm.
weird looking that it's not a good place. And another thing is, if you don't feel like you have the level of competency that you want, don't try to do a full sheet of, like what I'm looking at, three boats on the ocean with the clouds and everything.
Yep.
Paint a pair.
Yep.
Set up a still life, and set up a still life with a direct light. I've written a couple articles for Watercolor Artist Magazine about lighting.
Yep.
Lighting is so important, but if you do like top lighting or side lighting,
Mhm.
you can see the contours of something. And if the light is, if the light is shining straight on something,
Mhm.
it blows out the features. Like on
Yep.
on me, if I have that light, it just blows out the contours. Whereas if you're to the side, you can see some contours.
Yep.
um, but get to start simple until you really feel like, wow, I'm doing this.
Yep.
I've got my, and I did draw a lot as a child. I as a child, you draw an apple, but you do the shading. So
Yes.
if you don't have a grasp of that, a drawing class is not a bad idea. If you
Sure.
can shade an apple and see the light bounce and all that, I think it's going to translate better to your paintings. Don't you think? I don't
No,
know.
absolutely. I find it's like, once you get the basic techniques, I just feel it's like, drawing is what takes your painting to the next level. So you want to make sure that you understand, because once you draw, you start seeing more details than you just pass by. So you might see
Yes.
something, but once you're drawing, that's when you start noticing all the details, making sure what's needed in the painting and what's not needed in the painting. You make those
Yes.
decisions.
And I want to be forthright here and say that I do project my work now.
Sure.
For years, I drew everything freehand,
Yeah.
And I always tell the story about having this big-headed girl, and I had her head too big, and it was the year that I had like 5 Christmas commissions of houses. I painted more houses,
Yeah.
and one of my friends said, "Why don't you get a projector?" And I said, "Oh, that's cheating, you know." But I got one, and it saved my life that year.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've got a digital one now.
Yeah.
You still have to go back in and go over every inch of it and get it
Yeah.
right because, fingers are too wide. You can't see the tip of something. If something's in shadow, you can't see the
Yeah.
edges. So even if you use a projector, if you go back over it and, blow your reference up so you can see it, you can't
Mm-hmm.
have a tiny little reference on your phone
Mm-hmm.
and do a good job.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of things to set yourself up for more success. A good reference and a big enough to see it and that type of thing. But drawing is very important if you're painting realistically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just on this note, do you think that digital tracing or any other methods has any impact on the perceived value, or at least when you market yourself? Do people care much about that one?
Oh, if I've projected it or not?
Yeah.
Do you mean?
No. So
No,
when you are trying to sell it to the customers and other things, is there a customer? Do customers care about these kind of things, or what?
not in my experience.
Okay.
Not in my experience. And like I say, I can go out and I can paint and I can draw. In class, I go and
Yeah.
redraw everybody's stuff that's not drawn right.
Yeah.
But and I thought about it the other night because I knew we were going to be talking. I'm doing a workshop for the National Watercolor Society, and I was projecting the face we're going to draw,
Yeah.
and I was thinking what I'm doing. I'm changing the size of it so I
Yeah.
can see right in front of me. Well,
Yeah.
what is the size? I want it big enough that we can see all the parts of the eye.
Sure.
So I just it's such um it's such a useful tool.
Sure.
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
I decided years ago. I just decided years ago that I was going to use it and I was going to be honest about it. I think as long as
Yeah.
you're honest,
Yeah.
I don't pretend that I don't use it.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed. It gives me
Mhm.
more time to bake cookies with my grandchildren than
Sure.
trying to lay out tiny boxes and
Yeah.
get everything the right size. It's just a choice I've made.
Yeah.
I feel like I spend so much time on my paintings.
Yeah.
My paintings take a long time, and I've
Mhm.
sometimes asked myself, is this the best use of my life? Am I doing something worthwhile?
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm cutting out some time there, and I
Yeah.
know it's right. If I'm going to spend 3 or 4 weeks on something, sometimes it's only weeks, sometimes it's 2 weeks,
Yeah.
but I'm going to spend all that time. I don't want to have something
Mhm.
totally out of proportion and then
Mhm.
realize it later. I just feel like, my years are I'm getting, getting out of years, and I want to use my time well.
Yeah.
So that's just how I feel. I don't feel like it's a problem.
No, I don't feel it's a problem as well, because the way I try to think about it is like, as an engineering, I try to think about it as a logical way. You want to find something which you love, but also you have responsibility. You need to still see that if you can tie that work to pay your bills and some, and then being honest about it, and then just say, this is what I'm doing and this is the product. And let the people decide whether they want it or you don't want it. I think
Yeah,
that is.
it's funny. Years ago, I was getting pretty good. I felt that I was pretty competent, and I drove by a real beautiful house with a lot of the wooden gingerbread, and I
Yeah.
took a picture of it and I painted it. And then I went to them and like knocked on the door, and I think that's what I did. I can't quite remember, but I said, I painted this painting, and I wondered if they wanted it, or or else I called them because I remember they came over. But
Yeah.
anyway, I said to them, I did use some white paint, and they just looked at me like, who cares? And I thought that was so funny because I was like, I used white paint,
Yeah.
and they were like, it's beautiful, and they bought it.
Yeah.
But so that's when I'd go to teach. Here I've got, you know, these older ladies. and they're sitting there painting, and they're like, "Oh, we're not supposed to use white paint." And I always say, the white paint police are not coming today, because why can you use it in every other medium?
Yeah.
And the thing is, I can do such cool things with white. I
Sure.
can, soften something. You can't really brighten with white.
Yeah.
That's a fallacy.
Yeah.
But you can smooth out, you can glaze. It's really wonderful as
Yeah.
long as you don't do too much and it looks super chalky.
Yeah.
But again, as long as you're honest about it,
Yeah.
there's only like 5 groups in the United States that I know of. I know you're not in the United States, but that are transparent. So
Yes.
why not use the tools that we can use to make better art? You know?
No, absolutely. Now, I
Yeah.
just it's funny. It's like people take time to criticize other painting. You're trying to do a painting. If the painting looks good and you're honest about it, that's it. Doesn't matter what the method or the technique is. Just
No.
talking about white, is there any other color taboo or misconception about not using a particular color? Or is there something you hear about people not using like black and
I
gray?
don't use black. I don't use
Okay.
black.
Is it
Uh,
just as a part of the technique that you can get the tonal value correct just using the primary colors?
I feel like, well, this is what I teach in my classes, that
Sure.
if I mix the black, I can
Hmm.
take it apart.
Sure.
Okay, so if I'm using a yellow, pink, and blue to make my
Yeah.
black,
Yeah.
or then I have like little substitutions. So say I use
Sure.
a couple colors. So anyway, it can lean towards the bluer side. It can lean towards the pinker side.
Yeah.
And I always say I saw a magazine picture, and the girl had a a bouquet of flowers on a porch, and the shadow coming off of it went like from the blue to the pink to like more of a gray.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. The shadow was so beautiful. If I take Payne's gray and dilute it, what have I got? Lighter gray,
Right.
darker
Right.
gray.
Yeah.
So I want my paintings to be entertaining
Yeah.
and as beautiful as possible.
Yeah.
So that's why I mix my own grays and
Yeah.
blacks. It's more interesting. We're breathing life into each little part.
Yeah. But also, it feels like if you're not using gray or black, then maybe from your point of view, at least as I'm thinking about, is it needs better planning about how you're making your values work. You just because I feel it's like using a gray is a little bit of cheat code. You can get darker values sooner, but in your case, I feel it's like, is it wrong to read that it takes more time to try to get what you're trying to achieve without a gray or a black?
Not necessarily, because I can just mix up a black.
Sure.
So I I just feel like I can tell a lot of artists that I know do use a lot of gray, and
Mhm.
I can just the painting has a certain look,
Sure.
and I guess I'd rather I don't while I like to see a lot of color. I mean, I like a lot of color.
Yeah.
um I feel like neutrals are very important. But like
Sure.
I said, if I mix them myself
Hmm.
and I use the same colors throughout the painting, it has unity and it can just sparkle, and
Hmm.
I don't have the flatness of a tube gray.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
but I just did see a demonstration where someone was using neutral tint,
Sure.
and I was going to try it for a few things. So we'll see. We'll see if I like it. But I I think it's more important to know the difference between staining paints and non-staining paints,
Hmm.
and what's transparent and what's semi-opaque. I think that's really important because a lot of people have bags, big bags of paint, but they don't know what they do.
Sure.
So I feel like all the paints in my palette, I know their properties. I know what it's going to do when I use it.
Yeah.
And I do use staining paints because I work in layered glazes,
Yeah.
and I want it to stay fresh. If I put a
Yeah.
semi-opaque on. Like a lot of people, the only yellow they have is cadmium yellow.
Yeah.
Well, cadmium yellow is got a lot of opacity to it if you try and get it too thick,
Yeah.
and it's going to, you put it down and then you layer over it, it's going to move.
Yes.
So I'd rather have these layers of stainers, and
Yeah.
then I know what's going on. It's not going to move and get messy on me.
So do
But
you varnish your paintings after when you finish?
I do. This one's varnished.
Is it okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Some I do and some I don't,
Okay.
depending on if I'm showing it or
Mhm.
you know. So it's yeah, I do some.
Yeah. So I use neutral tint is because I took a class with Alvaro, I think in 2013, Alvaro Cassigne. And then when I took a class, I just copied his palette. So he had a certain colors, and one of the things he uses is a neutral tint a lot.
Hmm.
So, and that is how my starting point was. I'm going to copy what pigments he has, and then I'm going to go from there. And it has evolved over a period of time, but I still lean back from how he taught me. That was the first time ever I took any class which made sense to me. And then he was smart enough to explain why he used these colors to get a contrast the way he wants to get it. And then that's how I took it, and then that's how I've been painting. Because when I looked at your a couple of your videos and other things, when you said that you don't use your black and grays, and you're not the first one to say this one. So there are people who mix their own blacks. I
Hmm.
spoke with Jane Blundell from Australia. I think she does a lot of coloring and other things. So she has a strong opinion about what colors, how it works, and other things because you do like spend a lot of time on colors. Uh, I mean, it's interesting because I like what you said about the white police is not going to come here. You just use what you like and then
Yeah,
focus on that. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. We,
Uh,
we we have to enjoy it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, while we're talking about materials, can we just talk about just what type of materials do you use? Let's start with brush. So, is there a particular go-to brush you talk about, or you always use?
I I don't have them here with me, but I have a couple of brushes that I don't know if they're actually made anymore. And
Hmm.
I mentioned my husband has a machine shop. He's
Hmm.
taken them and he puts pins in them or something because they start to fall apart and the paint's
Sure.
off the handle. But I have a few 50-50, half sable, half synthetic that I just
Hmm.
love.
Yeah.
And for painting skin,
Hmm.
um, I I can't use a flat brush. I mean,
Okay.
I'll use my big 2-inch wash brush for some of my laying in
Mhm.
and stuff, but I
Yeah.
just find that a filbert,
Yeah.
that rounded edge, is so good for, I always say that I'm just laying this in very softly. I'll say the
Hmm.
paper doesn't know I'm here, and I need that filbert to just kind of
Yeah.
airbrush that on there.
Yeah.
So it depends on what I'm painting.
Hmm.
But some of my brushes are very inexpensive. I've
Yeah.
just gotten them at the craft store,
Yeah.
and I try to always share that with my students because it's expensive.
Yeah.
The paper's gotten so expensive. I work on 300 pound. I'm using Arches cold press right now, but
Hmm.
it's expensive, and
Yeah.
the paints are, so you don't want to spend money if you don't have to.
Yeah. So, is there any particular brand you like these days, the brushes, or you get sent some samples to
Mm,
try?
there's a few there's a few I'm not gonna be able to think of the name of it, but there's one that isn't too expensive and it's a synthetic.
Yeah.
Um, but I'll just try something, I'll
Yeah.
if something's on sale or
Yeah.
but I don't I just watched a watercolor demonstration and they were using a Chinese brush.
Yeah.
They're very I would describe them as very limp.
Yeah.
I can't paint with those. I mean,
Okay. You need a little bit stiffy.
some people it's just wonderful for them, but I need a stiffer brush with
Hmm.
more body and more bounce.
Sure.
I can't do what I do
Yeah.
with
So
that
you're
type of
used to
brush.
that. That's absolutely
Yes,
that's the way it kind of works.
yeah.
In terms of the pigments, what brand do you use? The pigments,
I
or
have
is
a
it?
combination of everything. One
Okay.
of the things about competition is that
Hmm.
I've won. Sometimes you win brushes and paints.
Yes.
So when I win paints, I'll try them out, and if they are brighter or just
Hmm.
uh, for whatever reason, then they get to go in the palette, and then
Sure.
they become. So I have some Daniel Smith, some Winsor Newton, um, mostly Daniel Smith and
Yeah.
Winsor Newton.
Yeah.
And I've used core for a while. There's so many great paints
Yeah.
out there now, and
Absolutely.
they're good quality, but I definitely would use professional grade paint. It
Yeah.
really makes a difference. Yeah.
And arches, what texture is it? Is it a soft, rough, not the
Oh,
texture?
I use cold press.
Cold press.
It's between hot and rough. I've
Ah.
tried rough. It's too rough for me. It's
Okay.
not. Yeah, but cold press has just enough texture that you can get
Yeah.
some granulation, but I
Yeah.
can still do my details.
So you do you use pigmented paints at all, or you're not? Do you buy any pigmented brush? Sorry, pigmented paints.
I
So you,
have a I have a palette with pretty large, where you can't see me, pretty large wells, so
yeah,
my 2-inch wash brush can
yeah.
go into my wells.
So like a
Um,
John Pike
it's
color,
actually a Robert Wood
Robert Wood.
palette.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I got some more paints to try. Like I got some granulating paints, and I thought, oh, I wanted to.
oh, that's the one I wanted to say.
Oh,
Granulated.
is that what you were asking? Is that
Yes.
what you were going to ask me? Granulating.
Not
Yes, I've
pigmented,
got
granulated
some.
pigment.
I got some to try. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I don't know. You have to be really wet to get the
yeah,
effects, and sometimes it's really nice.
yeah,
Um, but that's another thing, even when I say just know about your paints, French ultramarine
yeah,
granulates, and a lot of people don't realize that, and they'll
yeah,
use it on something where they want it smooth, and it's like, oh, why does it look like this? And it's like, well, but yes, I bought a palette, and I thought, oh, I'm going to have all these colors in this palette, and then I realized I can't do that because when I go on the road, if I take my Robert E. Wood thing, I won't remember. Like I'll
yeah,
get confused. Now I don't even need to look at them. Like I
yeah,
know what that is. I know what that is. And
yeah,
because I paint real fast, I paint wet into wet.
yeah,
So, my paper's wet, and I'm like, I let my
mhm,
paints. The thing I do is I let my paints set up.
yeah.
I do not squeeze out fresh paint for the day of the class.
Okay.
I fill my wells, and I want them to set up a little bit, and then I just spritz them all
Yeah,
when I start painting, and they'll get damp enough, but
yeah,
the way I look at it, they're more concentrated because
mhm,
that water's evaporated, and I can go into my yellow, go into my pink, I can mix my triad right
yeah,
in my brush,
yeah.
and I'm not contaminating the whole well. So
That's good. Yeah,
then when I'm done painting, just spritz my yellow and clean it off.
yeah,
So I think it would cost a lot more to paint with fresh paint the way I paint, and I wouldn't be able to control
yeah,
what I do. Like the reason I can do this wet into wet is because the paints are drier,
yeah,
and I'm loading my brush with saturation and not water. I
yeah,
need color. So
yeah.
yeah, I'm very particular. Like it has to
So do
be
you
like that.
monitor the humidity and the temperature in the room as well?
It affects it for
Yeah.
sure.
So do you keep an eye on how hot it is and how moisture? Have a meter
Well,
or something?
at home, I'm like I said, I'm in Western New York, so like right now we have the heat on,
Yeah,
and in the summer I keep my studio air conditioned.
yeah,
So it's usually I'd say it would be on the drier side.
sure.
Um, then I'll go down to Florida. I went to
Yeah,
Panama City,
yeah,
and I got there, and everybody's paint looked really fresh. And I said, "Oh, I asked you to squeeze it out a few days ago," and they said, "Oh, we did," and it just doesn't dry. So it does make a difference
yeah,
what climate you're in,
yeah,
but you just wherever you live, you would adapt
yeah.
to that and
No,
figure it out. But
yeah, funny you mentioned we were in Sri Lanka this December. The paint would never dry. Every time
yeah,
I'm going out of the hotel, I'm using a dryer to just to dry enough so that it doesn't start leaking in the
Yeah.
pack. So, but
Yeah.
that's so humid. The paint never dries. It's just it's always kind of wet. I just want to shift on your studio and your setup. I find your studio fantastic. I mean, I saw a video which was like 3 years
Oh,
old on YouTube. I mean, it's a very well thought studio. It
thank you.
is compact, but it has. I mean, it's a envious studio in my opinion, you know. And I'm just so amazed that you do painting and everything else along with that, and run a gallery just in the background. Could you just tell a story about how you got to do all the things, or is it a cost-cutting thing, or is it because you want to control everything, the quality and
Oh,
everything?
that's probably part. I'm a control freak. That's probably part of it, but it was more out of necessity that I learned to do everything because we didn't have the money. So
Sure.
now you we're just very comfortable now. My husband has worked really hard, and he's recently retired, and we're very blessed. But when I was younger, but even now, the cost of framing, I think
Yeah.
I'm too cheap to pay somebody to do
Yeah.
what I can do.
Yeah.
Um, I've changed a lot as I've gotten older. I said in my 30s and 40s, I did a lot of I did reproductions in gift shops, and I had a girl that helped me, and we would make the prints. I'd have her cut stacks of mats, and I just got to the point where it's like I don't want to do this anymore. So I
Yeah.
stopped doing that amount of labor, and I
Mhm.
really hate framing, honestly.
Sure.
But like right now, I've got to ship. I've got to ship a painting tomorrow. I got to ship two paintings
Yeah.
and a print that someone ordered, and
Yeah.
I really don't like to do it. But um, one thing I didn't mention when I first was painting, and I was in that art guild.
Yeah.
I did that for a few years. That we had all the boys, I think, at that point, and we could have used some extra money. And my
Yeah.
husband wanted me to get a job, and I got a job as an art therapist in a nursing home. It
Sure.
was terrible for me. It was not. It was not for me. I really didn't have the background for it,
Mhm.
and I was so emotionally attached to people and worried about them, and it was
Mhm.
2 months of insomnia, and I just said to my husband, I'm sorry, I can't do this. But then I was offered a job as a gallery director, and
Yeah.
I can't say that I made a lot of money, but I would organize the shows
Yeah.
and all that stuff. But where
Yeah.
I watched her frame. So
Sure.
I learned so much from being in this gallery.
Mhm.
And then I got my own mat cutter. And she used to say, I'm not going to train you how to do all this because I know you'll just use it for yourself. But I just watched her. I'm just
Yeah.
lucky that I can see somebody do something and I can do it too.
Yeah.
So I just learned how to do things. And
Yeah.
I hate cutting glass, but I finally got a decent glass cutter.
Sure.
Um, I don't know. And I make my own reproductions. I
Yeah.
I did try to farm that out. I had a guy
Yeah.
who was doing it for me, and he would adjust the colors. One time I went to get something, and I said, "Was there a sale on pink? Why is this so pink?" He says, "Oh, I just thought that looked better." And I said, "You can't do that. I said I want it to look like my painting." So obviously I had to get rid of him, but
Yeah.
um, I am very particular.
Yeah.
So like my color matches, everything, has to be as good as I can do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where that all came from.
No, but it's you are what I would like to say a complete artist, because you are not just an artist. You are end to end, like farm to table, the every whole
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
I'm just it yeah, I couldn't do it. I'm just trying to just focus on trying to improve my art, let alone do every other thing. But also, while we're talking about that, could you just talk about marketing, what you've learned, or something which we could think about, any lessons you've learned, how to market yourself? get the best prize or the best gallery. It could be anything. Anything, how it helps to market.
I don't have the marketing of the gallery thing figured out. I'm not in a gallery. I've never been in a gallery.
Hmm.
Um, I I was going to try it recently, and I
Hmm.
approached a gallery that I thought would be good.
Yeah,
They're about, I don't know how many miles away, a
yeah,
couple hour drive from me, and she said my work was too good. It was too
yeah.
much money, and I don't think I asked that much. And
Sure.
she says she's really sorry to not have me, but did I have anything that was like $300? And I said,
Yeah,
no, I don't. So
yeah,
that was painful.
yeah.
But I think yes, I did learn something this past year. Um, well, I think I sell the most when I go on the road teaching. So I
Sure.
take my smaller paintings with me.
Hmm.
But I also learned I did an online workshop for a group in California, and a couple they I said, oh, the demo's available, and they started a little bidding war. And then the girl that didn't get it, she was interested in something, but they wanted a workshop special. So now I do that. When I go around, I'll say, okay, this week I have coupons for money off on my website.
Yeah,
That's something, I have a website, I have Shopify,
sure.
and that evolved over the years. But I
Hmm.
also know how to do my website. I know how to go in
Sure.
the back end. I make the coupons. I do
Yeah,
all that stuff
yeah,
because you got to know what's going on, or you'll
yeah.
pay somebody to
Else.
do everything.
Yeah,
But I do have a girl that helps me
yeah,
when I need help, and she's
yeah,
based in Florida. But
yeah.
there's so many, you know, I know you said I do everything. There's so many different aspects to being
Mhm.
a full-time artist, but
Absolutely.
it's also fun to I feel like I put different hats on. It's like today I'm painting, you know, tomorrow I've been asked to write something for a magazine. I gotta go
Yeah,
do that. But then I edit my own video too. So
okay.
when I do a Zoom class, I have a camera above me that's a
Yeah,
camcorder,
yeah,
a HD, and then I'll record everything. Then I edit that video,
yeah,
and I'll put that for sale on my website.
yeah,
That's fun. I do enjoy. That's time consuming though, but
yeah,
I've just kind of learned on. I have Cyberlink that
yeah,
I do my video on, and
yeah,
it's funny because my kids are really smart, the boys, and my one son. I got a couple engineers, and the one helped me a little bit with editing, and then I don't know, like a year later or something. It was just about a year ago or something, and I said, I have a question, Tim, about this, and he goes, Mom, you're way past me, and I thought, what? Will you say that again? You know, and my grandson wants to learn about editing, and my
sure.
daughter-in-law said, not many people ask their grandmother to
Yeah,
teach them how to do editing. So that was
yeah.
kind of nice.
No, I mean, you're very inspiring, Kathleen. I know I'm just
Well,
being
thank
mindful about your time. Is it all right for another few more minutes?
Sure.
Sure. I'm just trying to think about this, like, couple of process when the painting doesn't go your way. I know you said that your painting takes some time, on average about 2 or 3 weeks. How do you know if the painting is going the way you're going? Do you have a milestone? How do you check if you should abandon this or should we continue this, or do you just complete it anyway?
No, I don't. And I have one that I just so I well I do know how to answer this.
Hmm.
I don't start painting until
Hmm.
I got a really good idea what I want it to look like. So I
Sure.
actually, that's one of the things. Well, I've always been blessed with being able to imagine things.
Hmm.
So see things in your imagination. So that's something that people really need to develop, is visualization. If
Sure.
you and I think that's what I do with the Photoshop elements. I'm pulling it up, pulling
Hmm.
these pictures up, and one of the things I do is I'll run it through some of the different posterize,
Hmm.
cut out, and I don't paint from those, but it gets my imagination going, and
Sure.
I'll see that one of those maybe I like the way that softened the background or
Yeah.
something, and so in my mind I'll know going in this is going to be this way and this
Hmm.
is going to be this way, and and of course I want it to look. I don't know. I just know where I'm going.
So you
Um,
mentally visualize how a finished painting looks like in your.
yes,
Okay.
yes. I don't start until I know where I'm going.
Okay.
Um, the paint this girl, Lily here behind me,
Yeah.
um, I tried to paint her 3 times last year, and
Yeah.
her skin is very fair,
Yeah.
and I've got a painting that looks great, but I ruined her face.
Yeah.
And I keep looking at it and I keep thinking, don't waste any more time on it. And then I thought, you know, collage is acceptable. And I thought, why couldn't I cut out her face and put a new piece of paper in there? I'm thinking about it.
Sure.
But I hate to give up on it because she's got this dress on and it's, drippy
Yeah.
wet in the water and it just looks great. But I hate to give up. I tried some matte, like the liquid paper, it's supposed to correct it. It
Yeah.
doesn't take the watercolor the way we'd like it to, but I haven't abandoned that. But,
Yeah.
it does get to a certain point where you feel like it's ruined. And then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, don't waste any more time on it.
Hmm.
But then again, it's still sitting there and I
Hmm.
may be able to fix it. We'll see.
Uh, no, that's a very good answer. What about self doubt or what do you call a creative block? So, if you had them, and what's your self talk like?
Ah, that, yes, I have a lot of self doubt.
Okay.
And for years, some of you may have heard of the imposter syndrome,
Sure.
and you don't feel worthy or something,
Mhm.
and I felt like that for quite a while. Now I finally own I'm an artist. I
Yeah.
own that, but
Yeah.
it didn't come easily.
Hmm.
And it's funny, how many people say they're artists? And you'll go up to somebody and you want to take their picture and you'll say, I'm an artist. Well, they don't know,
Yeah.
if you really are or whatever. But it's nice if you have a website and you say, well, look at my website and you'll see that I really am an artist. But oh, what was I going to say? I had a good point. Oh, self-doubt. Um, I have I have conquered incredible self-doubt, and
Hmm.
I had a lot of anxiety when I was younger.
Hmm.
And there was a time when the kids were little, I had them quite close, and I was overwhelmed, and I had insomnia and everything, and it's kind of a wreck. And I read some different spiritual books.
Yeah.
Norman Vincent Peale was wonderful, and just the power of positive thinking,
Sure.
and that just saved me,
Hmm.
and I remember just having I want, started getting anxious flying. We took the kids to St. Lucia, and it was I said to my husband, we were riding bikes and these trucks are going by, and I said, we could all get knocked into the ditch and no one would ever miss us, and so I had like anxiety issues, and my girlfriend at the time was traveling by herself and doing
Hmm.
different things. Her husband was in the army. And I thought, I want to do that. I wanted to do these workshops. And I thought, how am I going to do this? And now when I see myself, I get on a plane by myself. I
Yeah.
go rent a car. I go to these places. I don't know anybody. And
Yeah.
I'm fine. And I always think, I never thought I could do this. But
Yeah.
it's just like believing in yourself,
Hmm.
trying the next thing. And I just got over it. Like I'm not
Yeah.
medicated or anything. Um, I think through spiritual books and prayer and
Yeah.
the first time I got into the American Watercolor Society, I wanted to go see the show, and my husband didn't want to go with me. And I said, well, I'm going to go. And I drove to New York. We're about 7 hours away. But when it was time to leave, I was so nervous. I didn't think I'd be able to make myself go. And so I started off and I started listening to some spiritual music, and
Yeah,
it was just what I needed to get me feeling good. And
yeah,
it was a wonderful trip. I remember meeting Lauren McCracken and different people
yeah,
that I had always admired.
yeah.
And it was a wonderful trip. It was,
No,
but
Lauren was such a fun guy to talk to. He's very open about his stories. I really
yeah,
enjoyed talking to Lauren.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's good. But, I just think no one should ever be afraid to try anything
sure.
because I never thought that I'd be doing
Hmm.
all the things that I'm doing. It's like a miracle, really, but
Yeah,
you do have to believe in yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, what about criticism? So, do you care about criticism? Are you worried about criticism, or does it even pass your brain about, or you just focus on your work?
I'm too sensitive. I do want people to like me, and
Yeah,
there's different things all the time. I I haven't I haven't had an experienced too much with negativity like online. I know some people have.
yeah,
Um, some people can be quite nasty.
yeah.
Uh, and when I was doing more of my local work, I
Hmm.
remember there was an art group. There was a critique, and evidently I wasn't going, but they would talk about me all the time. Well, she should be doing this, and I'm like, what business is it of theirs? What I'm doing. So I had to try to get over that. But there's always going to be people that don't like you, so you just got to do what's
Yeah,
right for you. Just
yeah,
like that drawing machine thing. It's
yeah,
like if there are people that don't think I should use a projector, I don't care.
yeah,
I don't care. I can't care. I just got to do what works
yeah,
for me.
yeah.
And
Being practical about it. Yeah,
you got to. It's hard. It's hard especially if people are really rude to you. I wouldn't handle that well, but I'd get
yeah,
over it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's in store for this year, next year, Kathleen? Do you have any big plans for? Uh, are you a planner? Or are you a yearly? I'm going to do this sort of a person.
Yes, I one of the paintings I did a few years ago was life is what is it? Planning something. Oh,
Yeah,
planning your next move, and I did a chessboard. But
sure.
I do that, and I
Yeah,
try to take stock at the end of the year. I'm actually a
mhm,
New Year's Eve baby,
yeah,
so I always feel like on New Year's Day, I
mhm,
sit down and I just think, well, what did I accomplish? What am I going to try to do different? Um,
yeah,
I I'm excited. I've thought of some different ways that I'm going to approach my teaching this year, and I'm excited
yeah,
about that.
yeah.
And I'd like to sell more work. I'd like to
Sure.
sell more of my work. If I have people will buy my portraits if they're small, and I can take them on the road. And
Yeah,
like I say, I sold some. I did those coupons and sold
yeah,
quite a few this year. But
yeah,
um, I'm drawn to landscapes like waterscapes,
yeah.
floral still lifes, but I'm having a struggle internally because nothing has the power to excite me more than a face. Like
Okay,
um,
that's your
drawing
go-to. Yeah,
drawing a portrait and having it come to life in front of me. It's such a thrill for me. I
sure.
just I just love it, and I don't feel like I've painted
Yeah,
my best portrait yet either. So, you know, I want to try to do some other things so that people don't just think I paint portraits. Um, but I've painted everything,
yeah.
and
No, that's what amazes me is your breadth of work. And at the same quality or better, because you think that somebody who's doing portraiture wouldn't be good at landscapes or flowers and other things. No, but I think you're excellent. And any favorite artist, Kathleen? Past, present?
any what?
Any favorite artist you like or you get inspired by?
Well, somebody else just asked me that, and it's more of the the current modern day
Sure.
artists. I told you I didn't do well in art history. Um, oh, well, there's actually a couple of oil painters that I
Sure.
really like. Um, I do like oil painting. And one thing you had started to ask me if I only do watercolor, and
Yeah.
a few years ago I was asked to do a mural, and I did
Okay.
do a life-size oil mural
Mm.
of 5 figures. So I'm sure it wasn't as good as a really good oil painter would do, but it was pretty good, and I was
Yeah.
proud of it. But I have quite a bit of oil paint left over from that, so I still do a few oils.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't think I want to name names, but there are some artists that I'm just very impressed by.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm gonna slowly wind on. It was such a pleasure, Kathleen. You are such easy to talk to, and
Well,
then it was
thank you.
fun. I really appreciate you making time, and then hopefully we can meet sometime face to face.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
What's the best way to for people to reach you?
My website, it's kgilesstudio.com,
Hmm.
and on there there's a contact
Yeah.
um, area, and also Facebook, just Kathleen Giles. And actually, if you just Google my name, Kathleen Giles, I think my website will pop up.
Last words for people.
Don't be intimidated by anybody, and do your own thing. Just get a good camera. I mean, not even a good camera. Use your phone. Take your own pictures. That's what
Yeah.
advice I would have. Take your own pictures.
Yeah.
If you're just learning, set up a still life with a good direct light and
Mhm.
practice it. Mess around with it. You don't have to use local color, the color that it is, but get those values right, and just
Yeah.
if you don't feel confident, take a class, get some
Yeah.
instruction or something, but definitely take your own pictures and just do it. Just keep doing it and look at a lot of artwork, and just train your eye to see the values, and you have to get better. You just will.
Yes. Again, thank you, Kathleen. Thank you so much for your making the time.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. It was mine.